Your turn.
Hi, thank you for having me. I'm really excited to be here with everybody else. So I'm the founder of Inclusion Labs. We work to embed diversity, equity, and inclusion into the personal, cultural, and educational development of every young person. Simply, we want every child to be able to thrive in every environment, but particularly in schools. We recently launched our Decade of Diversity initiative at the end of April, and we now have 40 plus organizations and individuals acting as a coalition to really push the needle on two pledges in particular, the 25% diverse literature in our schools by 2030 pledge, and secondly, the diverse governing boards in our schools by 2030 pledge. And kind of segueing into that, really how that came about to be is kind of tied into the topic and the theme of this virtual. It's about belonging. And alongside belonging has to be awareness. They both go hand in hand. When we talk about diverse literature, you know, a lot of it, as Jack and Artemi have said, it's about that inclusion, it's about that representation and the importance of that, and seeing yourself reflected in the resources and also in the individuals that surround you. But also, I think a key part of that is what we hear a lot about in terms of windows and mirrors. And we use that when we're describing literature, but I think also it works in terms of describing leadership. We need people that look like us or that are like us, that will be inspiring, and we can be aspirational, but we also need people that don't look like us or aren't particularly like us, maybe, to understand and get us a greater sense of that awareness. So for me, these two things have to go hand in hand. When we started developing Decade of Diversity, it really just started from a simple question: why haven't we moved the needle? We've been talking about this stuff since I was at school 20 plus years ago, and yet here we are still talking about it now. And for me, I felt that a key component of that belonging and that awareness is that top-down, bottom-up approach. Yes, with the literature, the resources we're putting around these children, we want children like my children to see themselves reflected in the stories, to be heroes in the stories. So not just about, you know, the issues that we encounter as underrepresented groups, but also the aspirational aspects of that. You know, my daughter also wants to be a primary character on a fairy tale, and so on and so forth, depending, obviously, because she's quite young. But also with the diverse leadership side of things, you know, a lot of times with schools, we're talking a lot about we need more diverse faculty, we need more diverse educators, and absolutely we do. And diversity in its broadest sense, I feel we have this very narrow idea of what diversity looks like. You know, we need more ethnically diverse teachers, tick, diversity, but actually in its broadest sense, we need it, again, simply across the protected characteristics. We need socioeconomic backgrounds, we need representation, we need age representation, people with more recent educational experiences. But the reality is, and if we're being very blunt, the balance we need to see across our faculty probably won't happen in our lifetime, the balance we need to see. But what can and should are the leadership positions, diverse governing boards, senior leaders, and that in of itself is what's going to drive more diversity across our faculty. That in of itself is going to be aspirational for the students in our schools. And so these two things really need to work hand in hand. And so that's why really we set up the Decade of Diversity. I think for me as a member, as you can see, of an underrepresented group or profile or whatever, however you want to describe it, identity, with children who are mixed race, it's really important. But I think, again, in some ways it's very simple and it's very difficult at the same time. A little bit, you know, it's that contradictory nature of this work. But very simply, what do we do, people in underrepresented groups, to give our children a sense of belonging and a sense of awareness? Well, we do things like this. We don't have a secret key to a portal that reveals another world and by which we can push this forward. We do basic things like this. We put great diverse stories in front of them. We make sure that we have diverse leadership represented in front of them. And we're showing that every time she watches a Topsy and Tim, we're watching a Jojo and Gran Gran. Again, having that balance and making sure, and that's just what we really need to do. So with the Decade of Diversity, we're trying to really embed what is a very natural thing for people from underrepresented groups into a structure to support schools, but also telling them that, yes, we do need that to diversify our curriculum and our faculty. And there are great organizations and individuals that are working really hard to do that. But also, whilst we're getting there, there's some very simple things we can do. Let's make space on our bookshelves. Let's make space on our leadership teams. And from that, much else will flow. Diverse faculty, higher literacy rates, better outcomes, better attainment. So many things flow from just these two very essential foundational approaches. Thank you.
Temi, thank you. And Benny,